All right, shall we get into it?
Sure.
All right, so that's a whole clip that we just had right there.
Wow.
So we're starting a new chapter of Beyond Good and Evil. The chapter is titled "The Religious Mood." So gives off the idea that he's going to go kind of into depth about religion. So with 45, I can start.
Yep.
The human soul at its limits, the range of man's inner experiences hitherto attained, the heights, depths, and distances of these experiences, the entire history of the soul up to the present time, and its still unexhausted possibilities. This is the preordained human hunting domain for a born psychologist and lover of a big hunt.
Like, what is the meaning of life?
Well, I feel like I mean, keep going, you know.
All right. But how often must he say despairingly to himself, a single individual, alas, only a single individual, and this great forest, this virgin forest. So he would like to have some hundreds of hunting assistants and fine trained hounds that he could send into the history of the human soul to drive his game together. In vain.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, no. Keep reading. It's fine. We'll talk about it though.
All right. In vain, again and again, he experiences profoundly and bitterly how difficult it is to find assistants and dogs for all the things that directly excite his curiosity. This made me think of so when you go and you get your PhD in the field of geology, you become a teacher, a faculty member. And your faculty, as a faculty member, you now have graduate students. And those graduate students, their whole purpose is to go and answer questions that you have through research. And so it makes me think of kind of like this. So in a psychologist is what he's talking about. Like you find something that he says, there's still unexhausted possibilities. There's a question out there that still has yet to be answered. And now we're seeing that so for him, it's psychologists. Each person is coming up with their own little question and they all have their own schools of people that hunt down that question.
Yeah.
All right, we'll continue. The evil of sending scholars into new and dangerous hunting domains, where courage, sagacity, and subtlety in every sense are required, is that they are no longer serviceable just when the big hunt and also the great danger commences. It is precisely then that they lose their keen eye and nose. So sagacity means the quality of being sagacious, which involves keen mental discernment and sound judgment. So new hunting domains, these unexhausted possibilities, you need courage, sagacity, and subtlety. And, these dogs are no longer serviceable when the big hunt actually takes place. It's exactly when they lose that keen eye and nose. So in order, for instance, to divine and determine what sort of history the problem of knowledge and conscience has hitherto had in the souls of religious humans, a person would perhaps himself have to possess a profound, as bruised, as immense an experience as the intellectual conscience of Pascal.
I looked him up. Hang on. What did I do?
Yeah. That is. Pascal, a 17th century thinker, represents a religious mind plagued by doubt, caught between faith and reason. So kind of like Thomas, he just a ton of doubt.
And then he ultimately chooses faith over reason, the Pascal guy. Because I think in 46 he starts like fucking talking about him again.
Okay.
But yeah.
So despite that, he chooses faith. Okay. And then he would still require that widespread heaven of clear, wicked spirituality which from above would be able to oversee, arrange, and effectively formalize this mass of dangerous and painful experiences. But who could do me this service? And who would have the time to wait for such servants? They evidently appear too rarely. They are so improbable at all times. So he's like, I'm this person that's going into these ideas of religion, but where are my peers? That's kind of what he's asking here. And where are my servants? Like that would help me with this. They're so improbable and they're rare to find. Eventually, one must do everything oneself in order to know something, which means that one has much to do. But a curiosity like mine is once for all the most agreeable of vices. Pardon me. I mean to say that the love of truth has its rewards in heaven and already on earth. Like the thing that people would be like, God, just take this because I'll never understand it. Nietzsche's like, we can figure that out here on earth. Like there are things that like you don't have to they're not just saved for the next life.
Yeah. For sure.
All right. Let's see here.
Very deep.
You want to start breaking it down from the top, or like, what's your thought?
Do you have stuff you want to break down?
I mean, no. Tell me what you're thinking. I mean, I could give you like my general like vibe of like what this means or what I thought it meant. It's probably a better answer.
How do you think about what do you think about this writing? Like, does it make you look at Nietzsche a certain way?
Well, I like the hunt like metaphor. I know what he's talking about. The one thing that I think it kind of rubs me, and this isn't even about the whole overarching idea, but a lot of times he references like the people he needs help from, like as like servants or whatever, in this, because like they're doing like his bidding, like he's the big brain for like this big idea. But I think maybe, and this is me, like to find people to like actually help do the thing is like, first you got to find like fellow peers, like it like, and if you can't find fellow peers, then like maybe you're pointing in the wrong direction, so like you took this as like an academic sense. A lot of times I take things in the physical sense because I feel like that's like where I like to push myself, like whether it's like jujitsu or like when I was trying to do boxing or like when I'm running a lot, like all those things would be cool if I could do it with somebody else. But like sometimes you just got to go do that shit alone. And like eventually, like my coach is a coach right now, but like when he started jujitsu, it wasn't like a big thing in our country. So he was dealing with like 2 people, 3 people. Like now he's got a whole school. And like there's tons of people who want to go do what coach says, but he didn't get that right away. Like he like has like nurtured and developed like an idea, like a school of thought, and like now it's a thing, but like it's not like he went out looking for servants, but like we literally like, it's coach, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like I feel like it just sounds like a real like fucking naive thing to be like, I can't even find good servants to help dig for my idea. It's like, bro, like, I mean, you got to make your idea like a thing people want to go dig for.
And then you got to hold long.
You got to hold, bro. You got to buckle up. You got to like when things get bad. Like I know what he means. Like he's talking about like when people aren't bought in to like the level he is. Like when things get tough or like you face hard truths or whatever. Like those are the first people that are bailed. They're like lukewarm Christians or lukewarm whatever. And that could be like applied to anything. Like a lukewarm designer, like graphic designer. Like when shit gets tough, he's like, dude, I'll just quit. Like I'll just get like a normal thing. So like he needs people that are ready to like literally weather the storm and go all in on him. But like he wants it super fast. It's like you literally have to like help build. You have to like build. You have to help build a team, the people that want to be there to do that shit. Yeah,
you got to start building the castle until people walk by and they're like, "Wow, that's a really cool castle. Let me help."
And yeah, like literally, So
and it's. I mean, he had a short life, it seems like, but in his life prior to writing this book, he had just left academia because they didn't like his ideas. Like, I'm sure he had good ideas and went to academia in search of peers that are doing similar stuff. Didn't find that, and now he feels this way like post leaving academia and be like, well, I guess I have to do it on my own.
Yeah.
So he does have that kind of melancholic feel to him,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And ultimately, he got what he wanted. Like people do follow him now. You know,
Right.
He just didn't see it in his own time. You know.
Yeah, the flame was fragile, but some people found it, you know?
To quote him, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what do you think he's looking for? Like, at least in this.
Well, he's talking about all these philosophers in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? In the beginning of the book. And I think what he's thinking is like a lot of these people up to this point, like it's either yes or no, good or bad, right? There's all these people that are kind of like bi-directional. There's opposites, but there's never like nuance. And what he wants to do is study the nuance. And he doesn't have people around him that study nuance. And so he's like looking around like, I don't even have people that want to study under me to do nuance. And so like I'm feeling this like loneliness over here, you know?
And then
Yeah.
like when he's talking about in this chapter, like the unexhausted possibilities, like the hunting domain of like a psychologist. It's like for the human like consciousness, like for the human life, like if you like thinking about it, it's like you could take your life a cajillion different ways, but you only live one life. And that's why like he needs like, if you're a psychologist, if you're in a study, you would like, it'd be better if you had multiple different people because you could test your idea like 100 different ways, you know,
Right.
and like double check it faster. But like we don't have the chance to do that. We only get to live like this one stream of data of our life, you know? And he's like, imagine if we could like, if I had a bunch of people all trying to tackle the same idea, you know, and like we all tackle it a million different ways and like see which ones come back right, you know? And I feel like that's what he's kind of talking about. Like that's what the hunt is. Like, what's the right way to live life? What's the right way to like, live life? Like, how do we? What's the true North Star of consciousness? You know?
Right. Yeah. I had ChatGPT do a connection to Nietzsche's broader philosophy. And so it gave me this. It says, this aphorism foreshadows Nietzsche's critique of religious dogma by exploring how one might go about studying it. His frustration with the lack of sharp, independent minds reflects his disdain for conventional thinkers who are content with surface-level analysis. The emphasis on solitude and self-reliance connects with his earlier discussions on free spirits. True intellectuals must break free from societal expectations and embark on their own path of discovery. The references to Pascal highlight Nietzsche's admiration for those who struggle with deep existential dilemmas rather than accepting easy answers.
I looked it up. I looked up who Pascal was, and like he was like a French thinker that I guess like his whole jig was like his tension between like pragmatism and like actual faith. And right. I guess he ended up choosing faith, as he's like, I don't know, pragmatism can only take me so far. And I guess like Nietzsche respected that. At the very least, he struggled his whole life between like the nuance of both.
Right.
And like he wasn't ready to like throw one away and keep the other until like eventually he was like, bro, I spent too much time thinking about it. I'm going with faith.
Right. I feel like there was a guy in history too who was like a philosopher back in the past. I forget who it is, but he was like, I've did all this thought and I've done all this thinking, but if I was a betting man, my entire family and most of the world believes in this, so I'm going to believe in it. And so,
yeah.
He's
like,
like,
you can only take it so far. We really don't know the truth.
Right. All right. 46.
He gonna talk about Pascal again. He really got a boner for this guy.
All right. Anybody want to read or me?
I'll read.
You read?
Yeah.
All right.
Faith such as early Christianity desired and not infrequently achieved in the midst of a skeptical and stubbornly free-spirited world, which had centuries of struggle between philosophical schools behind it and in it, counting besides the education and tolerance which the Imperium Romanum gave this faith, is not the sincere, austere slave faith by which perhaps a Luther or a Cromwell or some other northern barbarian of the spirit remained attached to his God in Christianity. It is much rather the faith of Pascal, which resembles in a terrible manner of continuous suicide of reason. A tough, long-lived, worm-like reason, which is not to be slain at once and with a single blow. The Christian faith from the beginning is is sacrifice, the sacrifice of all freedom, all pride, and all self-confidence of spirit. It is at the same time subjection, self-derision, and self-mutilation.
Okay, stop there. Okay. He talks later about the North versus the South Christianity. I think he kind of touches it here a bit too. But let's see. Faith is not that sincere. Let's see. Austere slave faith by which people Luther or Cromwell. All right. So again, he brings up Pascal, where he's like, this isn't something that's supposed to be slain with one blow. This is something that is worm-like, so it just kind of works its way around. This isn't something you take out in one.
When he references, is he referencing the Roman age?
The Roman Empire.
The Romans are the first people to make Christian culture orthodox. So they established this is orthodox, like canon Christianity. And then anything outside of the canon is called unorthodox, which are the other branches of Christianity. So they're the ones who Romans are the first people to be this is it. And we've all decided that this is canon Christianity. This is orthodox. And I feel like that's kind of what he's referring to. Because within that orthodox, they're pretty chill. They are devout believers, but he's talking about how they're free spirited, the southerly people. He's that's this is my mind. I could be wrong. The Latin side of the Roman Empire, it's the subsect of Christians who are I'm trying to think the fucking Acts people, the Pentecostals, they're fucking they're on some real deal crazy shit. That'd be considered unorthodox, Huh?
They're strict. The women have to wear certain things. They have they have their bumpers.
And those people are more, I think he's saying the slave mentality of what being a Christian is. They totally believe hook, line, and sinker into the word,
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
he says the Christian faith from the beginning is sacrifice, the sacrifice of all freedom, all pride, all self-confidence of spirit. It is at the same time subjugation, self-derision, and self-mutilation. That's big words to say, dude. I can kind of see where he's coming from though, because
well, he's kind of right in some ways.
The whole concept of sin, right? Sin, his idea is I think at least is by not sinning, you're giving up freedom, your pride, and all self-confidence of spirit. You're giving up those things. So at the same time, it's subjugation. You're you're judged for the things that you do. Self-derision.
Well, I mean, in the Bible it says you give your yoke to the Lord. We literally are slaves to the Lord if you accept him fully. So he's right. Self-mutilation, you get circumcised if you're supposed to be a Christian, So I see all the things he's saying. It's true,
Yeah.
It's show me that foreskin, bro. It's nah, I gave mine to the Lord. It's why?
Why did you do that?
There's cruelty and religious Phoenicianism in this faith, which is adapted to a tender, many-sided, and a very fastidious conscience. It takes for granted that the subjection of the spirit is indescribably painful, that all the past and all the habits of such a spirit resist the absurdism in the form of which faith comes to it. Modern men, with their obtuseness as regards all Christian nomenclature, have no longer the sense for the terribly superlative conception which was implied to an antique taste by the paradox of the formula God on the Christ. Hitherto there had never and nowhere been such boldness in inversion, nor anything at once so dreadful, questioning and questionable at this formula. It promised a transvolution of all ancient values. It was the Orient, the profound Orient. It was the Oriental slave who thus took revenge on Rome and its noble, light-minded toleration on the Roman Catholicism of non-faith, and it was always not the faith, but the freedom from the faith, the half stoical and smiling indifference to the seriousness of the faith, which made the slaves indignant at their masters and revolt against them. Enlightenment causes revolt, for the slave desires the unconditioned. He understands nothing but the tyrannous, even in morals. He loves as he hates, without nuance, to the very depths, to the point of pain, to the point of sickness. His many hidden sufferings make him revolt against the noble taste which seems to deny suffering. The skepticism with regard to suffering, fundamentally only an attitude of aristocrat morality, was not the least of the causes also of the last great salvation insurrection, slave insurrection, which began with the French Revolution.
Okay, well, when he talks about like how like the Oriental slave he took revenge on Rome and his noble light-minded toleration, because I've been listening to the Roman podcast, like I just got past that point. I mean, like the Christians go from being like this like super minority subsect within like the great Roman Empire to like fast forward like in a tight amount of time, they become like they have like huge power within the empire. Like Constantine pretty much becomes like the first Christian emperor, you know, like pretty much outlaws like all the other religions and like makes way for Christianity being like the number one religion in the empire. And like from that moment forward, like they start having like real power with like their arch like bishops and shit like that, you know? So like Rome persecuting Christians in the beginning, like they were right to, because like they really were seeds for destruction like within the empire. From just speaking from like the Romans that were in charge at that time, like what they were foreseeing, you know, like that enlightenment of like religion really did lead to like the fall of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, it reminds me of slaves that were turned into like gladiators, and then they started to revolt and started to become like stronger than the actual thing that was keeping them a slave. And so that's what came to my mind when it started talking about like the Enlightenment and slaves being
Enlightenment is revolt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got this from ChatGPT because I need a little bit of help here. So it talks about the Oriental influence and the reversal of values. So Nietzsche points to the Oriental origins of Christianity as a reaction against Roman values. The phrase God on the cross symbolizes a radical inversion of traditional values, where the once despised attributes of weakness and suffering become virtues. This inversion, he argues, represents the slave's revenge against the nobility of Rome, subverting its lighthearted tolerance and indifferent freedom. And then the Enlightenment as revolt. Nietzsche connects the Enlightenment to a broader historical pattern of revolt, describing it as an extension of the slave revolt against traditional aristocratic values. The slave in this context seeks the unconditional and rejects nuanced understanding, reacting with visceral hatred against suffering and its perceived causes. This perspective culminates in events like the French Revolution, which Nietzsche views as the apex of this insurrection against aristocratic morality.
What is aristocrat?
Like monarchs, kings, queens, next level, like royalty type people. So interesting. Let me see. The slave in this context seeks the unconditional and rejects nuanced understanding, reacting with visceral hatred against suffering and its perceived causes. Visceral hatred against suffering.
Dude, like, imagine being a slave in those times. Like,
For sure.
I can't. Oh my! Back then, it's like as an emperor, like just a regular citizen that had freedom to have access to like kings and queens. Or, and
Yeah,
like, imagine if you were
aristocrats.
below all of that
Yeah.
at that period of time. Like, what living like that was like.
I mean, it's oppressor and not oppressed, you know, oppressor and the oppressed, excuse me. Like that's a kind of a mindset that's still kind of pervasive today, you know, the oppressors and things like that. So like, you know, the sentiment still exists.
Is he saying that like enlightenment or periods of that leads to revolt? Is it a byproduct
The
of it?
Enlightenment.
The Enlightenment?
So Enlightenment as a whole leads to revolt, but the Enlightenment led to French Revolution. Like
Yeah.
John Locke, Rousseau,
Yeah.
like those types of thinkers led to that revolt because Enlightenment created revolt.
Right.
And this Enlightenment to people, like even in the Roman Empire, was like Christianity. It leads to revolt and change.
And we're kind of going through some sort of alignment right now with our United States government.
Oh, dude, you're telling me?
We have been unburdened with what has been.
So I had some questions from ChatGPT. Figure we could discuss one of them.
All right.
In which ways, or in what ways, can individuals break free from the slave morality that Nietzsche describes?
By volunteering to be a slave. You know, like it's like how Jordan Peterson talks about, where it's like you can either like wait till hard times find you or start volunteering for hard times like on your own, and like that's what makes a difference on how those things feel. It's like part of, and this is for me, like part of the thing for Christianity is that you have to accept like being a servant to the Lord, but the Lord says like there'll be no better yoke than mine, because like we're all a slave to something, whether it's a slave to like our academic desires or curiosity, or like our financial, like, you know, like for whatever we want more money or whatever it is, like pleasure or whatever, like we end up becoming a slave to like whatever we spend the most time to. Or to be the most free person, you find the best master and fully live your life that way. You know, like, do you think Ace ever thinks that he's like a slave? You know, he enjoys being by my side. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's how I try to have my relationship with the Lord. Like, I want to be the most useful tool I can be for him. Like, whatever it is, if I'm a spade or like an axe, like whatever it is, it's like, I want to be happy doing the thing that only John Crossan can do. So I think that's how you get out of the slave mentality, by you just totally buy into it.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I think that's perfect, actually.
I like that.
Yeah, that's great. All right, 47. Who's it going to be?
I'll go for it.
All right.
Just read a few sentences, or
Yeah, stop at a period or when you feel like a point's been made.
yeah. Wherever the religious neurosis has appeared on the earth so far, we find it connected with three dangerous prescriptions as to regimen: solitude, fasting, and sexual abstinence. But without its being possible to determine with certainty which is cause and which is effect, or if any relation at all of cause and effect exists there.
All right, so the religious neurosis. So that's a way to call religion. Whenever that has appeared, we find it connected to three prescriptions as regimen: solitude, fasting, and sexual abstinence. So religion's pushing these three things. They're always
Okay.
connected.
Oh, that's perfect.
Okay.
Solitude,
You can continue.
fasting. Well, what do you guys? Solitude, fasting, sexual abstinence.
Yeah.
I mean,
Any thoughts there?
I think he's just making a pretty just Ace. No, I think he's just making like
It's an apt observation.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm high. A good observation. Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
This latter doubt is justified by the fact that one of the most regular symptoms among savage as well as among civilized peoples is the most sudden and excessive sensuality, which then with equal suddenness transforms into penitential paroxysms, world renunciation and will renunciation, both symptoms perhaps explainable as disguised epilepsy. But no way. All right, go ahead.
So let's pause right there. He's talking about like how like pretty much the discipline to not like to like that get solitude, that abstain yourself from sex, and what was the third one again?
Fasting.
And fasting. He's like a lot of times these turn into like these people being extra horny, extra sexual. Okay. And like,
yeah,
I immediately thought of like in all religions, like to Jews, Muslims, Christians, you can look back and at some point, like because these like priests abstain themselves from sex, they end up having sex with young boys, and they somehow like justify that as in like it's fine because it's not actual or whatever. And so he's like, so I immediately thought of that. I immediately thought of that when I was reading that, and then like he's like these potential paroxysms. How do you say that?
Penitential paroxysms.
Yeah, that's what I thought of. It's like it's a paradox. They're like it's bad for sex, but like they're fucking little boys. It's like don't you think that's like a paradox? like
so those two words right there, penitential paroxysms, means remorseful, a remorseful, sudden, intense expression of emotion. So like, they get this excessive sensuality like John's talking about, but then with equal suddenness transforms into like a remorseful feeling. And then they renounce the world, they renounce their will, and both symptoms perhaps are explained as disguised epilepsy. So epilepsy is that I always thought just epilepsy is that thing where you see the lights and you fucking tweak.
No, I thought actually, yeah, like
yeah.
Okay.
Right. So like they get excessive or whatever, and then they fucking get zapped or whatever from epilepsy. Like, oh fuck, I was wrong. I was super bad. That was not supposed to be done.
Yeah, that's how those priests feel after they're done fucking those kids, dude. They're like, what did I do?
That's post-nut clarity right there.
It really is a thing. I think it's what he's talking about. After they do that fucking dirty thing, and it's like so sudden, they're like, "Oh my god, what did I do?" Like post nuts real. Like what did I do? What did I do? And then they renounce the world. They go,
I'll never do it again.
This world's for sinners. I'm a sinner. Like it's all for nothing. Lord save me. And then they're like back.
It's like a drinker when you drink too much. Same thing. You're like, oh, I'll never do this again, Lord, if you just get me through this night. Like it's a good observation so far. All right, go ahead. But nowhere is it more obligatory to put aside explanations around no other type, as there grown such a mass of absurdity and superstition. No other type seems to have been more interesting to men and even to philosophers. Perhaps it is time to become just a little indifferent here, to learn caution, or better still, to look away, to go away. Yet in the background of the most recent philosophy, that of Schopenhauer, we find almost as southern, what? No.
Oh, no. As the problem in itself. Sorry, I fucked up.
Good. Hold on. Let's see that for a second. So, he says like this type of act that we've been describing up to this point so far has been, appealed. It's appealing to, it's no more obligatory than with such mass as men. He's talking about men and philosophers find this as like obligatory. This is part of their thing.
Like the most common people.
Right. And then he gets into perhaps it's time to be a little different, right? To learn caution, or better still to look away, to go away. And so he's like, well, maybe this would have highlighted that maybe it's time to do something different. And then he continues, yet in the background, So now he's going to get into Schopenhauer and maybe, how his approach
Yeah, I
is.
think he's referencing like 45 too. Like, where he's like, this is what my indifference comes with when you enter the thought of Nietzsche,
Uh-huh.
like with entering the figuring out the nuance where it
Right.
lies between all these differences of fucking sensualist or
Excessive
excessive.
sensualism.
Yeah.
All right. So then he says, yet there's more recent philosophy, Schopenhauer, we find almost has that problem in itself. Okay, go ahead. This terrible note.
Where?
The top first sentence. This terrible note.
This terrible note of interrogation of the religious crisis and awakening. How is the negation of will possible? Negation of will possible. How is the saint possible? That seems to have been the very question with which Schopenhauer made a start and became a philosopher.
You can keep going.
Go there?
Yeah.
And thus it was a genuine Schopenhauerian consequence that his most convicted adherent, perhaps also his last, as far as Germany is concerned, namely Richard Wagner, should bring his own life work to an end just here, and should finally put that terrible and eternal type upon the stage as Kundry type. I don't know how to say that
either.
And it loved and lived at the very time that the mad doctors in almost all European countries had an opportunity to study the type close at hand, wherever the religious neurosis, or as I call it, the religious mood, made its latest epidermical outbreak and display as the Salvation Army.
All right, hold on.
Damn. A lot of words.
Yeah, that was one whole sentence.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So how is the negation of will?
What was that?
Bless you.
How is the negation of will possible? So that's just I think it's almost rhetorical at that sense, because he's saying like, how is it even possible that people are negating their will by doing this self-sacrifice and
Is
self-mutilation?
Schopenhauer, is his philosophy built on negation of will or negation of will?
Let's see.
And thus it was genuine perennial consequence and not his message. It was his last.
Give me. Ace, come here.
He's 48, I'm 47.
No, I think,
Yeah.
I don't know, my understanding, I feel like he's saying Richard Wagner is taking the same path as Schopenhauer, or whatever.
Howard.
And that negation is possible, but only at a severe consequence. And he should just come to an end. Like whatever he's searching for, like he's searching in the same way Schopenhauer did. With the negation of will.
Yeah. I think you're on. Yeah. 10 doctors of Missouri.
But I've never heard that name though.
Other?
Mhm.
Okay. Let's continue. Go ahead. If it be.
There's more words, David. I hope you're ready.
Oh shit. If it be.
Yeah.
If it be a question, however, as to what has been so extremely interesting to men of all sorts and all ages, and even to philosophers in the whole phenomenon of the saint, it is undoubtedly the appearance of the miraculous therein, namely the immediate succession of opposites, of states of the soul regarded as morally antithetical.
Yeah.
It was believed here to be self-evident that a bad man was all at once turned into a saint, not a good man.
And so what he's highlighting here is that, so as far as I know, in the saints of Catholicism, these people were people that were excessive in their sensuality, right? Like they all had their own thing. But they ended up flipping the script completely to be opposite. And they become saints in the Catholic, web, like of what they got going on. So that's kind of what he's highlighting here. This is what's so extremely interesting to men of all sorts in all ages, and even to philosophers. So like they could be making a bad decision, but it could end up making them a saint later.
Yeah.
In a snap of a finger, it's miraculous, right?
Hmm.
Okay, that's what I have. If you want to continue.
The hitherto existing psychology was wrecked at this point. It is not possible it may have happened principally because psychology had placed itself under the dominion of morals, because it believed in oppositions of moral values and saw, read, and interpreted these oppositions into the text and facts of the case. What? Miracle only an error of interpretation, a lack of philology?
Yeah. Philology? Philology.
Wombology.
There's miracles.
Hitherto. This man uses hitherto.
A lot.
How wild, dude. It's like his favorite word.
Hitherto.
So this idea of saint permeated through philosophy, where like there's opposites. This is like why the saint is so imperative, is that it now created opposites. So it created a bad and a good. Where like in Christianity, sexual immorality is a no-no. So sexual morality is a yes, so it's created this opposite and opposite dynamic, and so that permeated into philosophy as well. All right.
48.
Sure. Anything else you guys want to add?
No.
Yeah. 48. Anybody?
I'll go for it again. If you want.
John hasn't read it.
Okay.
Oh, you got the.
Yeah, he got the one. maybe David should.
Lock
I
in.
got it. All right. Ready?
Stacy,
It seems that the Latin races are far more deeply attached to their Catholicism than we Northerners are to Christianity generally, and that consequently unbelief in Catholic countries means something quite different from what it does among Protestants, namely a sort of revolt against the spirit of the race, while with us it is rather a return to the spirit or non-spirit of the race.
All right. What'd you get from that, John, so far?
I mean, like, again, just with my background knowledge from like the Rome and stuff like that, like there's Orthodox, but like when the Romans accepted Christianity, it's not like they accepted it as in like, and some of them did, but like it was more like a group of people that were the Romans were used to praying to gods, and whoever the winning god was changed often enough where it wasn't a weird thing to be praying to a new god. It's all about whatever god kept you winning. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, it all started first with Romulus's, like from Jupiter. He was blessed from Jupiter. And like right before Christianity, Constantine's father introduced the world into like a monolithic paganism religion called like the sun god. And the sun god became Christianity like the way we know it. Like they morphed the two. Like, for example, the Romans already had this holiday they would celebrate on December 25th, and they just took that and married that with Jesus's birth because like it was just easy to do to keep like their schedule the same. Like that's not actually technically Jesus's like birth. They just like put one monotheism religion over top of another, and it became what it is now. And like
Right.
those Romans, the people who ratified what's Orthodox, they're not as firm. He's making the argument as firm believers as they say they are. It's more about keeping like the social glue, one united thing.
Yeah.
Where these other subsects of Christians, like he's referencing the Protestants, they're like the real deal. They're the people who were like, when the Romans came and told them they have to acknowledge that like their emperor is a god, that they said, I'd rather die. You know? They're like, what are you talking about? They go, everyone else just says like, sure, whatever, who cares?
Right.
They go, you'd rather die? They go, today's a good day. Like today's a holiday. Why are you guys acting like this? You know?
Yeah.
So like, that's my background of that current time.
And to push that further, the person that was willing to die for it, if they're, he separates Latins and Northerners in his writing. But in that case, like the Northerners represent the person that would be like, I would rather die, right? Those people, if they stop believing, they fall back into the non-spirit of the race. They're not, it's just like they're now still one of us, but they're just, different. But with the Latins, it's basically taken as a revolt against the spirit of the race. So like if you're, Mexican households, I know like the Catholic Church is pretty damn like serious business, and like, or just church in general. And if you were to tell if I would have told my mom I'm not Christian at some point, it would have been like a whole like I literally was revolting against my entire race, So like he's highlighting the differences of the two.
Because it's more about the social glue. It's more about the social glue is like what the church did for like for the empire, for the South, quote unquote. Is more like it's the social glue that can unify all of Rome, the one true God, know, and the one true God picked Constantine to be the emperor, like under the one true God, I'm the emperor. He chose me. So it like really helped with like their social glue.
Right. All right. Go ahead.
Fuck. All right. We Northerners undoubtedly derive our origin from barbarous races, even as regards our talents for religion. We have poor talents for it. One may make an exception in the case of the Celts, who have therefore furnished also the best soil for Christian infection in the north. The Christian ideal blossomed forth in France as much as ever in the pale sun of the north would allow it. How strangely pious for our taste are still these later French skeptics, whenever there is any Celtic blood in their origin. How Catholic, how un-German does Auguste Comte's sociology seem to us when the Roman logic of its instincts? How Jewistical that amiable and shrewd Ciron of Port Royal, Saint Beuve, in spite of all hostility of the Jesuits, and even Ernest Renan. How inaccessible to us Northerners does this language of such a Renan appear, in whom every instant the merest touch of religious thrill throws his refined, voluptuous and comfortability couching soul off its balance. Let us repeat after him these fine sentences. And what wickedness and hauntingness is the immediately aroused by way of answer in our probably less beautiful but harder souls. This is to say, in our more German souls. This next part, I
have the English translation, but let's talk about what you just read.
I'm about to say I have it too, bro. I wrote it down, but whatever.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let's talk about what we were saying here. So, the Northerners are barbarous. They have poor talent for religion. The only case that is not that the Celts.
He said the Latin races are far more deeply attached to their. So like the Latin. You're right. You're right.
The Northerners have a poor talent for religion. The only like exception is the Celts. Celts are like Ireland and like super north, that kind of whole area.
Scotland, baby.
Yeah, and they furnished the best soil for Christian infection. So that's where Christianity blossomed. And it also caught on in France. And how strangely pious for our tastes. Still these later French skeptics, wherever there is any Celtic blood. So like, it sounds strange from somebody like Frenchman, German, like to be so into it, like the Celts are. They're the Southerners, right? All right. So let's see. And so then when somebody who's not Celtic sounds like they're Celtic or like a Southerner, it sounds weird to a Northerner. It just seems like off. Right. That's kind of what I got there. Okay. And then the translation, John?
Okay. let us say then that religion is a product of the normal man. That man is most in the right when he is most assured in an infinite destiny. It is when he is good that he wants virtue to correspond to eternal order. It is when he contemplates things in a disinterested manner that he finds death revolting and absurd. How can we not suppose that it is in these moments that a man sees best? These sentences are so extremely antipodal to my ears and habits of thought that it is my first impulse of rage on finding them. I wrote on the margin something French
The
until
the religious foolishness par excellence.
until in my later rage I even took a fancy to them. These sentences, with their truth absolutely inverted. It is so nice and such a distinction to have one's own antipodes.
What does that word-
Antipodes.
what does that mean? Antipode?
Yeah,
I wrote
like,
it
yeah,
down.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
Antipodal. So it's like opposite ideas.
Hmm.
So he wrote in the margin, what religious foolishness par excellence. And he had rage initially, and then he took a fancy to them because the truth is absolutely inverted in them. He's like, wow, this is actually like insane how good he wrote it.
Well, I know what he means. So like, okay, for example, just a few years ago, I would see like a crazy take on the left, like a total inversion of the actual truth. Okay. And it would literally bring me to a rage reading it that people could think this way. Okay. But now I can look back and laugh because I'm like, I almost like go back and try to find those Easter eggs of people like literally so far up their own ass, like having he, him in their fucking profile and like saying like the most like inverted thing. It's like I didn't forget, buddy. Like now it's funny. I like looking back at like those, like, it's like, I can't believe me and you share the same anatomy, like the same brain. And you came to the conclusion of inverting the truth. No, I'm not saying I agree with like what he's saying about these people, but I'm just saying like, I know what he means. Where like, you almost hate your enemy so much you love them because like, it's so funny that they could even like be the same thing as you, you know?
Right.
I think I fucking like, I can't believe it. Like it's a fucking.
And then it's so nice to have your own opposite ideas.
Yeah, you're like, thank God I don't think like that.
God.
Thank God I'm not a fucking cuck. You know, like Destiny's a good example. Like, thank God, you know, like people go back and just dunk on him, you know? But it's like sometimes he would get on, I was like, it just bring me to a rage. I'm like, I can't believe people think he's a smart guy, you know?
Yeah. Nice. All right, I think we covered that one well. 49.
I just want to say, you guys didn't think that I was gonna have it translated, but I was ready. I was ready. You guys weren't expecting that.
How do you guys translate that?
I use ChatGPT.
I got a picture. I got a picture translator where I just took a picture and I hovered it, and then I just wrote it down in the book.
Yeah, I take pictures and I upload them into ChatGPT and then have it process the images.
It's so crazy.
Oh, that's crazy.
So crazy.
Yeah.
49.
Yeah, 49.
That which is so astonishing in the religious life of the ancient Greeks is the irresistible stream of gratitude which it pours forth. It is a very superior kind of man who takes such an attitude towards nature and life. Later on, when the populace got the upper hand in Greece, fear became rampant also in religion, and Christianity was preparing itself.
Yeah. So the approach the ancient Greeks took with the irrestrainable stream of gratitude.
What were Greeks? What were Greeks?
Well,
Zeus, all that stuff.
Like, what do they call it?
Mythology.
Mythology.
well, I mean, I think he's talking about like the general, like Greece was always the big brain of the ancient world. Like when Rome was becoming a small nation, Greece was like the big kid on the block. Okay.
Right.
And like it's where all the great thinkers come from. And it's where Romans got like they built their education mimicking the Greeks. And then when Rome finally became the big kid on the block and defeated the Greeks, they incorporated them as in like the brain of the empire. And all the famous Romans were educated by Greek tutors. And this small population of people ended up becoming like the quasi leaders of the Roman Empire because like all Roman idea was fueled by Greek origin. So a lot of like what Rome is the high adoption rate of like Greek ideals. So I think that's what he's talking about. Like Stoicism could be a branch off of like original Greek like ideology. You know what I'm saying? And Stoicism is all about like your gratitude to even live today, you know? And like that's why like Stoicism builds into Christianity very easily because like it's a lot of the same stuff. Yeah.
And it's a superior type of man that takes that attitude towards life. And then later, when the populace got the upper hand in Greece, fear became rampant, also in religion, and Christianity was preparing itself. It's like to be that solution to fear.
True.
A well-perceived solution.
Like for example, like the Romans and stuff were taught off like Plato and shit like that, like famous Greek thinkers.
Right.
So like they're the framework for like he's living in like Spain and France are all just like branches off the Roman Empire that eventually became too big for them to like keep, you know, stay a part of. So like everyone's thinking comes from the Greeks, if you think about it that way.
The entire Western world.
For sure. Like there's this whole thing that like the Greeks really never lost. Like even though they got incorporated, they ended up like being like shadow rulers of the empire because like their thoughts are what became like the origin of like what we think of Western culture is, you know? The Romans were like, this is good stuff. We should keep these people around just this fucking thing all the time. Like that's literally what they did. They go, soul green's not their thing, but fuck can these guys think? Fuck.
Yeah. And then America just becomes a carbon copy, you know?
America took the best of the Roman Empire as the Republic. There's this really fun thing about like the world took the Roman Empire in two ways, either like the Republic or the Empire. Like Russia wanted to be the Empire, the Soviet Union. You know, we wanted to be the Republic, which we are, the United States. You know, we're a republic of states.
Right.
So like we try to take that version of like what the Romans used to be, which was like Roman and Greek thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we nailed it.
Always talk.
Yeah, that's it. So if you got something else from this book, this selection of reading, this was 45 through 49. Drop that down in the comments. I think we did a really good job of breaking that down. I like how John's roping in Roman history. I think that's really cool. And then there's just different takes that we're having. I really am enjoying that. So
honestly, I think this book is like it's really elaborative with like the thoughts and like the visions and stuff for me. Like,
yeah,
it's really challenging for me, but I think being in the group and hearing you guys like break it down for me honestly helps me a lot.
For sure.
Yeah.
And reading it, I'm like learning how to read it because now I have to sit down and read it like out loud, at least the first time. I sit down, I read it out loud, and then my way I've been reading it since the beginning, like I would just read it kind of like it's a textbook.
Mm-hmm.
But with this one, you have to like, when he has those like commas or like dashes, like long hyphens, those are like stop and think for a second, like read really slow and then take a second at that point, you know? And
for
so
sure.
How to read it alone too is been really helpful. But now that we're this far in, it's becoming a little easier to understand his ideas. Like ChatGPT helps, but reading it and just like kind of pondering for a second really helps. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it so far. That's the beginning of Religious Mood, the chapter 3 in this book. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and drop a comment, follow us on our social media platforms. If you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe, and we will see you guys next week. Peace.